I'm not going to be long. I'll try to make sure that you get your tea while still hot. But perhaps it is important to start by pointing out that as I was seated there, listening to our speakers, I realized that there is so much that we still have to do as a university. I'm talking about us as a university because our business is centered around knowledge, generating knowledge. As you listen to Enva Mudala talking, as you listen to Prof. Sherry speaking, as you listen to Savelo speaking, you'll realize that there is still so much distortion. There is still so much distortion of what we currently regard as knowledge. And I am actually saying this to start by saying that perhaps we should make a conscious decision to stand on the shoulders of our own giants. Maybe that is the beginning. And that beginning cannot be that much of a coincidence of history. Particularly if I am going to talk about that within the context of the fact that this summit takes place on the 40th anniversary of the death of Steve Biko. In African mythologies, there are no coincidences. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that perhaps Biko is conversing. And in that conversation with us, he's asking very important questions. The very same questions that relate to the national question, the very same questions that Prof. Sherry raised. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is, are we listening? In other words, Biko is saying that as a university, what are we doing with the minds of those who came here, the minds of those who came here to be shaped? And I want us to, all of us, says that the answer lies in the type of education that we are offering. But we need to go beyond that and ask ourselves a question: does the education that we are offering have a liberatory value? I'm asking this question, colleagues, because if you listen to Palilo Hotla, that man will certain you significant numbers of graduates go to the ranks of unemployed. Yet we are a university. Yet we are supposed to offer education. Yet that education is supposed to liberate society from inequality, poverty, and unemployment. It's okay to blame government for all this in terms of how it ran the country. But we should not deflect attention from our complicity, because the maladies that afflict, because we are complicit in the maladies that conflict society. Remember, colleagues, we design programs, we design what should be taught and what should not taught, and this put us in a powerful position of being the judge. Those who drink, who love fine whiskey, probably they will know the word connoisseur. We are the connoisseurs of knowledge. In other words, we decide what constitutes knowledge. In simple terms, this means that we have the power to define the future of humanity. But the question still is, how many of us are aware of that power? I'm asking this question because in many instances, we appear to have abdicated this responsibility to other people who decide for us what ought to constitute knowledge in our university. And Dr. Slebe, I want to illustrate this point by making reference to a very interesting South African concept called recalculation. It doesn't exist in the English dictionary. It is our concept, right? What does it mean? I have been around, I have been involved in recalculation, and I think I'm in the position to can tell you what it means. It means rearranging the curriculum without changing it. The main intention is to largely titillate the palate of coloniality. In other words, we are rearranging the curriculum to suit the taste of coloniality. We are so engaged in the form than substance. Much of what we teach remains the same. What often change are examples of what we teach as they relate to certain subjects, not theories, not the philosophies of the disciplines. And perhaps to this extent, Albert Einstein was very correct when he was defining insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, but expect. That's insanity. Are we insane? That some of us still continue to teach the same thing that our professors taught us many years ago. You listen to what our professor yesterday said. And largely, by continuing to teach what our professor taught, it is not perhaps because of the continued relevance of what they had taught us. But largely, it is our timidity to confront the colonial matrices of power situated in the epistemology of our disciplines. Because of this, our interaction with our students in the lecture hall continue to be characterized by what the American critical theorist Donald Macedo called the fundamental pedagogy of big lies. That lie, which is much of what we teach, refuses to accept that Africa existed before colonialism. That lie refuses to accept the fact that many archaeological study reveals example of how those that live in those ancient times display a high sense of a sophistication in ordering coexistence. Think about the ancient African civilization of Mapungubwe. I'm happy that my dearest professors talk about these things. Think about Timbuktu in Mali, the major trade center in the 15th century. How many of us try to get back to these heritages and try to appropriate to them a deeper meaning that could assist in reframing our epistemological orientations? I'm glad that Enver talked about the rich body of knowledge that Neville Alexander left us. But unfortunately, we are, with his words, insular, chauvinistic, and linear. I'm from the field of public administration. When I was doing my PhD, I had a very serious problem because all the books that I read define public administration in a particular way, that is in terms of Euro-American conceptualizations. And as I interact with my professor, they keep on emphasizing the fact that, no, we are trying to look at how the state can actually facilitate coexistence. And I said that maybe public administration is a science of coexistence, but not in the version that your American conceptualization are saying. Because there was coexistence long before colonialization. The question is, why can't you go back and try to interact with the archaeologists? Because those people can study artifacts and try to get as much as possible from them about how did the pre-colonial societies organize their coexistence. See, when I look at the kingdom of Mapungube, I am fascinated by the extent to which the whole thing, most of my friends are the archaeologists, and we share much together. And how they narrate the story as they read the artifacts, how the whole kingdom was so organized. As a person who claimed to be teaching governance, obviously I have to be curious. How did they organize themselves? In other words, if we want to talk about curriculum development, rethinking our epistemology, trying to achieve what we call cognitive justice, we need to go back and try to understand how during all those days, all those ancient times, people used to organize themselves. How did they order themselves as a society? And in that, in the kingdom of Mapungube, I saw fundamental governance lessons. And also, I saw, remember Mapungube also traded with the East. And I could see important lesson for the economist. I could see important lesson for those that are studying international relations. The same thing also applies insofar as Timbuktu is concerned. I could see important lesson that relates to a sophisticated trade system. But guess what? We don't even want to read about this. We want to continue to teach the way our professors taught us. And in doing this, we are wittingly or unwittingly complicit in normalizing. I'm going to use the words of my friends here. In normalizing and universalizing coloniality as a neutral state of world. See, yesterday, VC made a very important statement where he referred to an Afro-Caribbean philosopher, Frantz Fanon. Fanon talked about colonial unconscious. Fanon talked about colonial unconscious. In other words, now I'm going to explain it to you. It means the illusion that decolonization succeeded in ending coloniality. And therefore, any endeavor to craft a post-colonial society shall necessarily evolve from the purest premise. That is an illusion. Remember what Savelo said? Coloniality is a pattern of power which emerged as a result of colonialism. Coloniality is inscribed in the very same books that we prescribe, which have not been written by us, from our own theories and knowledge system. Coloniality, it is in the criteria to rank the universities. Coloniality, it is in our aspirations. I was talking to Rashigan last night to say that if you look at the concept of a university now in South Africa in terms of what it seeks to achieve, it seeks to produce the middle class. In other words, our university has become a center for the contestation of space in the middle strata. We all aspire to be Europeans, to be whatever. We don't aspire. And also as a university, often with the ranking system, we aspire to be in the leagues of the Ivy League. Ivy Leagueism in itself is elitism. And if we aspire to be a people's university, we should not aspire to be an Ivy League university. We should aspire to be the best university that TUT can be as a people's university. So, what am I saying? How's Carol? Coloniality survived colonialism. And what does this mean? Sabel, I'm going back to the Argentine sematician, Walter Magnolo, when he's trying to make a distinction between all these concepts. Let me start by saying that we all know the great African moments. I want to explain again what Savelo tried to do, by illustrating how this concept differ. Let's go back. We all know the great moments of independence with the euphoria of coming to an end of colonialism. In other words, when the sovereignty of the colonial power, as expressed in the economic and political relation with the colonies, was withdrawn. And that is decolonization. But the end of colonialism did not mean the end of coloniality. In other words, the long-standing pattern of power remained to be part of the day-to-day experience of our reality. It is there in our books, like as I said before. It is there in our aspiration, like as I pointed out before. It's there in our self-image. Remember, Steve Biko was very frustrated by this false self-image. That from the black consciousness philosophy, the concept of black like me, not black like me, proud to be black, came up. Right? Right? Is it black like me? Yeah. Yes. Mashawa came up with black like me, but it does have certain connotations. I don't want to talk about the mayor. Self-image, the image of who truly we are, right? In other words, coloniality is more about cultural imperialism. And as we interact with our responsibility of what ought to constitute knowledge, we often do so being trapped in coloniality. The question now arises, how do we extricate ourselves from this trapping? And in answering this question, it's a pity he's not here, but I wanted to say to Professor Ahmed Bauer, who also made a very important point yesterday, that the only way out is through decoloniality. In other words, it is still too early to bastardize the concept of decoloniality as meaningless. Because it is an exercise in developing conceptual, theoretical, and philosophical capacity to salvage the epistemological orientation of our discipline, which are still rooted in coloniality. A true epistemological liberatory project is the function of decoloniality. And that much Savelo underscored in many of his writing when he said that, when he defined decoloniality as the struggle to bring into intervening existence another interpretation that brings forward. Another interpretation that brings forward, on the other hand, a silent view of the event, and on the other, shows the limits of imperial ideology disguised as true interpretation of the events in the making of the modern world. In other words, decoloniality underscored the significance of cognitive justice. Cognitive justice refers to the equality of the knowledges. It refers to the equality of the knowledges. So, towards the end, what are we saying? What are we saying? Going back to what has been said this morning, I think perhaps as a university, we should take the decoloniality agenda forward, especially in the context of TUT. Right? And I'm going to ask this question. Is it not possible, for a start, to look into the possibility of a module that will cut across all the discipline. In the same way that we decide TUT 101, maybe we can talk about TUT 102, wherein we can begin to see how we can incorporate the work of Neville Alexander and many other post-colonial theories. And why do we do that? The answer is simple. Just to also remember, Sodin yesterday made a very important point to say that education also is about character formation. And how do we build a character on the basis of, in the context where we don't have a sense of history? Because our students need to be given an opportunity to have a sense of history, a sense of who they are. For me, it is not a question of accrediting the module or not, because accreditation in any case is a bureaucratic exercise. For me, it's a question of knowledge. For me, it's a question of also instilling a sense of pride and confidence in our students. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You might be doing engineering, you might be doing whatever, but you need to have a sense of who you are, so that that self-image that we talk about, it can be a true self-image of yourself. And to that extent, I will conclude with what I said when I start. Steve Biko is actually talking to us. Steve Biko is saying that, when are you going to mainstream black consciousness as a philosophy? Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe is saying that, when are you going to realize that African university that I defined for you in 1941? When he said that, an African university is the custodian of the interest of the African people. Thank you very much.